Welcome back to Procrastinator's Pit Stop. I'm Chris, and today we have an incredible guest joining us. Our mission here is to fuel your drive to get things done by exploring the journeys of individuals who have successfully overcome procrastination and mastered productivity. Our guest today is Mridula Patnaik. Mridula is a seasoned entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience across diverse industries. She's actually got quite an interesting portfolio behind her. She's a Bachelor of Commerce. She was an interior designer. She was a professional storyteller in California. And she also spent 15 years in the education industry as an administrative professional. And today, she's actually a writer and a resilience coach who is actually writing a book for young minds, which is called EW4's Mindful Adventures. And it's actually in the process of being released. So, this definitely makes her a prominent figure in the world of productivity and time management. So, before we dig into everything, let's kick off with a fun icebreaker, Mridula. So, if you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be and why?
Hi, Chris. So I have to tell you, I'm going to say Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi, and I have some reasons for that. So I was born on his birthday, and we share birthdays. So every time October 2nd comes up, my I would be teased a little saying, poor Gandhiji is turning in his grave. So it used to be a little fun thing, which I always used to be teased about. But I think a man of peace, uh, and just an amazing patriot. So I've always looked up to what he offered the world. So I'm going to say Gandhiji.
That is an excellent choice, I'm sure. What would you be eating?
Sorry, what would I be eating?
Yeah, what would you two be eating when you were having dinner?
Oh gosh. So he's vegetarian. I'm vegetarian. So we would be doing a lot of vegetables and a typical Indian meal with a lot of dal or pulses and well, a good rice meal, I think. I love the meal. So but another fun thing is on in India, the day his birthday is celebrated is a non. There's no alcohol sold on that day. So my friends were not too happy whenever those days came, and particularly if it was on a weekend.
Hmm.
So unfortunately, we can't share a glass of wine, but we definitely would be doing a nice vegetarian Indian meal.
Well, that certainly sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Before we dive into the podcast and to the different aspects, let's learn a little bit more about you, Radula. Can you tell us about your journey and what led you to where you are today?
Yeah, yeah, Chris, I've had quite a journey and I don't know how far I should go, but I'm going to try to give it to you in a little nutshell. So my life really started. I grew up in India. I did my education back in India, and I had a very interesting background where one side of my family, my maternal side, was really very literal, academic, teachers, scientists, and my father's side was all business, stockbrokers, financial companies. So it was an interesting life. But after I did my undergraduate in commerce, realized I wanted nothing to do with numbers or accounts or anything to do with that because in my mind, I was an artist. So I studied interior designing and I got to work with an amazing architect in India at that time. But very soon after, my father, who ran a stockbroking company, had a massive heart attack. And while he was recovering from it, my mother asked me to join him so I could support him. It was a family business and he needed support. So I actually had to leave my designing dreams, at least I thought temporarily, but it ended up being permanent. And I moved to the stock market. And I actually helped him run the company and went to the trading floor representing the company. And again, as life would have it, within 3 months of me doing that, I met my ex husband. And I think we were married within 2 months of knowing each other. So life actually, I had dreams, and then life had a different plan for me, right? Then I had a child right away within a year or so of my marriage, and I ended up being a homemaker for the next 14 years. And that was an incredible journey by itself because we moved from India to US. There was a lot of drama going on in my personal life. So I think me staying home was the best. And I've always, until date, I prioritized family and my son. And I have no regrets about it. But then after 14, well, we moved to California, and as soon as we moved to California, I've always been this really active person playing tennis, doing this. I used to learn classical dance. So I was a very active person. I never really just sat around. And while in California, my child was barely 5 years old, and I used to rewrite many of those epics that we've learned about in children, as children. The Bhagavad Gita, the Ramayana, and some of these wonderful epics. And what I did was took stories from there, rewrote them to today's children. And then I approached the public libraries in Santa Clara, California, and I said, I want to be a storyteller. And I remember the first time I walked into the libraries, the lady there said, we don't do volunteer storytelling, we only take professionals. And I said, well, I looked at her and said, well, I'm a professional. And she laughed at me and said, well, I've said stories before. And then she said, okay, what do you charge? And I looked at her and said, well, what do you offer? What are the going rates? Because I had no clue what a professional storyteller would ask. And she said, well, anywhere between 75 and $250. I said, well, give me $75. I just want to tell my stories. So they signed me up for an event. And that event was so well attended and got such great reviews. And I think the director of Santa Clara Libraries happened to be there. She saw my show and said, "Oh," she said, "it's one of the best shows I've ever seen. We are going to book you again, and this time we'll pay you the best top dollar for it." And then before I even realized it, they'd published, the local news said, storyteller from India, so they actually advertised my storytelling session. And the next session was a fantastic hit. And I think my confidence grew and all that because I had come through a journey. I was in a different continent. I didn't know if my English was understood well enough. Getting confident. And I loved what happened at that time. I gained so much from that experience. But right after that, I had to go back to India to take care of my ailing mom. And I had to spend a year with her, and she passed away end of that year. So there went my storytelling journey. So now that's shifted because it's been a few years now. And I come back to the US, and I had a tough marriage, my first marriage. And I think came back and I took up the first job that came to, I was scouting around saying, what can I do now? And I saw a job opening for the local school district, which wanted an administrative assistant. And I said, okay, done. I'm just going to go. I just need something to stay busy for now. And I became an administrative assistant in schools. But it proved to be a boon, really, because my son was young, and very soon after I took up this job, I became a single mom. And it provided me so much to, stay at home with him during the summers and take care of him. So it gave me gave me balance. It also put me in a really safe place but made me too comfortable. So I stayed there 14 years. But as much as I thanked the school districts and I enjoyed my time there, the back of my mind, I always felt I needed to do more. I was never satisfied with myself because I always pushed myself to do a lot more. And this was just kind of staying stagnant for many years. And it didn't make me happy. So, but I had to bide my time. My son went off to college. Time, time passed and I remarried. And now I found myself in Florida for the last couple of years. And the funny part was, I came here and I did exactly what I did before. I went and just found another job, the first job that came. But then at this place in my life, I took a big step back and said, why am I doing this job? I don't need to do something that I never wanted to do in the first place. So I lasted in this new job for 10 whole days. I gave in my resignation. Nice. And I met some, I think the purpose of that job was just to meet some wonderful people. I met some amazing people, made some great connections, and I left the job. And here I am, a resilience life coach and a writer. I finished my first book. Actually, it's a wonderful little book for children, all about mindfulness and awareness to the environment. So it's in the process of being put together and soon will be published. And here I am. I hope that was not too long winded, but here.
No, that was an excellent story, and it's just so amazing how, and it just goes to show, to remind us that, life has so many winds and turns and spins, and you never know where you're going to end up, but you always end up where you're supposed to end up, which is, it's a very, very beautiful story. So let's talk a little bit about, procrastination. You mentioned how you said that you were sitting there for about 14 years. So how do you define procrastination and productivity yourself?
Chris, for years I sat in absolute stagnancy. I didn't move forward and I didn't understand myself. So, my true definition is procrastination happens only because we want to avoid tasks that feel daunting or unpleasant, right? It's a loop where our fear of failure or feeling overwhelmed makes us delay that action. So, what I did, just sat steeped in that procrastination in the job for 14 years because I was afraid. And I realized that only today. I was afraid of failure. I had no confidence in myself after 14 years of marriage which failed. I had zero confidence. And also I grew up in a family where, like I said, my mother's side is highly academic, so a lot of high achievers. So I would look at them and I was always inspired by them, amazing people, I had a wonderful family. But I looked up to them and I never thought I was an equal to them because I had my own journey, right? They
Mhm.
were all great in my eyes. But Chris, just this morning, I have to say truly, a thought crossed my mind. And I was, because I had another conversation with my sister, we were talking about something else, and I thought crossed. I said, I was always this person. When I looked at people, I looked at just who they were as human beings. And I wonder when I allowed the thought that they were beyond human beings come into my head, So I related to people just as human beings, irrespective of what their education is or what their knowledge is or what their status in life is. It never mattered to me. And that realization came to me today because I said, wow, so this is really where I am. I've always just related to people. I remember telling somebody a little while back who spoke a lot of philosophy, has read all kinds of books. I love books and I love philosophy. I'm not against it. But somebody was going around quoting and feeling, that, they offered more. And I remember asking the question, yes, we can quote philosophy, we can read books, but are we living by those rules or are we living by what we are reading? If you're living by it, then it makes even more meaning. But if all that is just talk saying I know this much, and you're not really following or understanding what it says, then what is the purpose of knowing all this philosophy or talking big? So to me, it's always relating to the simplicity, to the core of the human being. And I think I'm still understanding that. But again, the process of understanding who I was also helped me move out of my procrastination. Of staying for 14 years, I stayed rooted. But as I grew, I uncovered my fears. I understood who I was. And it was a very long process. And here I have to say, Chris, I wish I had a life coach at that point of time because it would not have taken me 14 years to be where I am today. And I'm very proud of who I am today, but I wish I had just done it earlier. And yes, life has its own path, everything has its own time. But if I had a life coach then, Maybe whoever I am today, I would have been 14 years ago.
Thanks for sharing that. You mentioned that you overcame it and you examined your fears. So, what's your secret for overcoming those fears and by staying productive? And how do you maintain focus and motivation in that time?
Chris, as much as I procrastinated, I am somebody who always wanted to do more. And I don't have an exact definition of what that more is. I wanted to give more of myself. I wanted to achieve more. I had a drive. And because I had that drive, I started examining why I was rooted to one spot and what was stopping me. So I went back and I really looked, when I spoke to you about my background, my family, what brought those fears, it, I mean, today I'm able to say it easily, but I didn't know that before. So I had to go back and explore it, think what's stopping me? What was my background? I think we studied with subconscious is developed between 0 and 7 years. So I didn't know that. Well, maybe I've read it, but it's come back to me today as, as a life coach. All those are more aware in my, current situation. So I really went back and explored what was stopping me, what were my fears. And luckily, or I don't know, maybe it was my upbringing, or maybe it's a combination of who I am and my upbringing. I faced my fears one fear at a time. And it was hard for me. It was very hard. So each fear I would face it, and I would actually say, what's the worst that can happen? And I would go and do it. And then I found out it was not so bad. Then I would do one more thing. So I really took baby steps, but I took a very long time to do it. But I did it, and I'm very proud of it today. I'm really today. I'm happy in the space I am in today, and not knowing that I'm still growing. But that's what helped me overcome the procrastination. I had to find out my fear. I had to take baby steps to overcome those fears. And it worked. It really, really worked.
So you could say a lot of reflection, a lot of awareness, and just being willing to move,
Oh,
but
yeah.
then also being consistent in your movements.
Yes. You have to be consistent. Absolutely. Because you can't take two steps, particularly when you're trying to overcome something. You can't slack there. You have to commit to that forward movement. You have to commit to your search within yourself. You have to take those steps. And commitment is a big term there. Because if you don't commit, then you're just going back the slide, right? You're just slipping back down. And then the scramble is going to be harder each time. So the commitment to it is very, very important.
Okay. Just going back over your story, how you mentioned it, and such an amazing story and such a winding story. But what were some of your proudest moments in those? Some of those specific achievements that you think that I mean, they're all so amazing. But what would you say is your crowning or shining achievements, or some of your proudest achievements out of that?
I think there were many moments where I turned around, looked at myself, and said, wow, did I actually do it? You know, because like I said, I had so many fears, so many self doubts, imposter syndromes, and the fight was within myself was quite intense, to come out of those fears. But I loved my story, but how the storytelling part of it opened up my eyes to the realization that I could offer so much that people loved listening to. I think that was a big turning point in my life because I think when I moved from India to the US, I was going through a seriously low point. Was battling to keep the marriage going. I had a very young son, and I was not satisfied just staying at home because I wanted to do so much. And then I walk into this library, and suddenly, it happened so organically, Chris. I didn't plan to become a storyteller. I didn't plan. So I just walked in. I said, oh my God, I saw some storytelling session going on. So I walked up and said it. But that event, the way it took place and the success that it gave me, it just shifted my thought process. It said, my gosh, look at, I did something and it was so well received. And if I had continued then there, I knew I would have had a completely different path, and I would have enjoyed it thoroughly. So I knew when I really take that effort and do something, I have the same capacity as the next person to really succeed. And each one of us have that, but we just need to find that turning point, find that confidence within ourselves, and that was my aha moment, really.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing. So let's talk a little bit about what you've currently got going on. I mean, it sounds like you've got a lot going on. You've got this book that's coming up for release. You're a coach. Tell us about what are you doing now, and give us a glimpse into your current world.
So now I'm a certified life coach from the Jay Shetty School, and I'm super excited. It's been another deep, insightful journey to be here, and I'm a resilience coach. And the reason I actually chose resilience is because of my own journey. At every turn and twist, I had to dig deep into my own resilience and find my resourcefulness and really work from there. And that was a big help to for me in my journey, right? So now I'm a resilience life coach and I'm a writer. Like I said, one book is coming out, but I'm also in the process of starting a book about my life story. And I think I might be able to bring some unique experiences to this book. I when I grew up, I grew up with my mom, a fantastic parent. I mean, she was gorgeous inside and outside. She was, she wrote poetry. She was a scientist herself. She taught science in a local college there. But she also, during our growing up years, she dealt with some mental health challenges. And it was for a decade, it was pretty intense. So I had to walk on eggshells when I grew up. But I really can say it was hard, but it also had its good moments. And I adored my mom. And we knew as children, myself, my sister, my brother, when she was herself, she was the perfect goddess. But when the illness hit her, it was a different story. But we knew the difference. And luckily, she somehow turned it around and she was healthy later. But then what happened is, as a mom of a teenage boy, as a single mom of a teenage boy, I faced the same thing. My child had the same challenge as my mother. And he too, just like my mother, has turned it around today. But when these things pop up, they are intense for some years. And I
Mhm.
had to experience that as a daughter and as a mother. And both times I felt I was alone in the journey. So that's made me particularly experienced. Maybe I don't know what term to use, but very unique experiences. And I bring unique understanding to this whole process of parenthood, mother, in so many ways. So understanding nurturers and, because that's who parents are, but nurturers are not limited to parents. Nurturers are so many, in so many forms. So I want to write, and I have kind of put together a structure. My book is going to reflect some of that story, and it's going to be a journey writing the book that I'm beginning that process now.
That sounds really exciting. If you had to take everything that you've learned on your journey, and all your wisdom into one powerful kind of tip for people listening, what would it be?
Wow. I don't know. Let me think. I think, I shared something recently about listening. Listening to yourself. Listening is a skill, right? Learning to listen to others is a skill, but listening to your inner voice and listening deep, shut out all the noise. Listen to yourself. What do you want? How do you want it? What are your values? Who are you? listening to that voice, listening to yourself very quietly, either in meditation or how you have to find a way to really listen to yourself and understand who you are. The minute you understand that, you're going to find solutions. You've already started finding solutions in the process of understanding who you are. So I think it begins in just understanding who you are at the core, and everything else will follow suit because you will make it happen once you understand that.
It's a very good and very powerful thing. So a lot of self-reflection, introspection, really get to know yourself.
Absolutely. Because without that, where how can we take steps, Chris? How do we be resilient? How do we stop procrastination? Right? How do we do these things? First, we have to understand who we are. Who are we? What is stopping us? What's happening here? We have to have that awareness. We have to look inside because you can, uh, the other things are all just bandages. But how do you heal yourself inside? When you remove the bandage, what is there? Has that wound healed?
Very true. Very true. So you've got a lot of big plans. You've got not only this book that's being released. You've got another book, an autobiography you're going to be writing, and then I'm guessing that you've also got your coaching aspirations as well. So where do you see yourself in the next year?
Oh, Chris, I am so looking forward to grow my coaching business. I am so really excited to reach out and help people find who they are and move forward. And it's just so motivating for me to do this process. And in a year, I don't know, I hope I have a lot of clients. I don't know the number. I'm happy to just help everybody and really grow my business as a life resilience life coach. I do want to grow it, and that's going to also be my focus this year, and I'm confident. I'm really looking forward to it.
Can you tell us a little bit about what it means to be a resilience coach? Like what parts do you focus on to help somebody be more resilient?
Chris, I think you froze. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So yeah, when I say resilience, it like I said, it came from my experience. So when you there are blocks, right, and people face so much in today's world. You know, career, home, caretaking, children, advancement in career, taking care of yourself in the process. We're all juggling so many different hats. And overwhelm and anxiety and stress is a big part of today's world. Every single one of us face it because I think it's just the nature of today's world, right? So, how do we find out how to maneuver in this kind of situation where you are handed so many things on a tray and said, deal with it? And it overwhelms people, right? And some people, many people, I shouldn't say some, many have severe anxiety. Many don't know how to maneuver these things. Now, as life coaches, we come with a unique set of tools how we're going to help these people move forward, right? So one of the things is find out what are all on your plate. How many things do you have on your plate? Help them prioritize it. Help them look within themselves. What matters most? Start with that. Make sure they're prioritizing themselves first. And when they start with that, then we teach them skills of being resilient because there are many things that cannot go off the plate. They're committed to it, right? Caretaking, family, so many things. They cannot just wash their hands off and not prioritize them. They have to still prioritize them. But how do they do it? How do they find their own resilience and strength? What is resilience? It's strength. It's digging deep into you and finding that strength. So when you find that strength, you also realize you yourself have the resourcefulness to handle these things. So as a resilient coach, I hope to reach to you and help you find that strength and help you find that resourcefulness that you know you have. We're just going to help you tap into it and then bring it out and help balance the rest of your life. You know, just bring it to a balance. Bring down the overwhelm. Bring down the anxiety. Make sure you have some self-care. So it's a package. When you say resilience, when you start with resilience, it really filters into every aspect of your life. And really, that's what I hope to offer.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing, following you and seeing just how your story unfolds, because it's definitely a very interesting story, and you've got a lot of big aspirations. So I'm sure that we'll look forward to seeing you succeed in helping all those people and releasing that book.
Thank you, Chris.
Is there something today that maybe we should have talked about or asked but didn't?
Not that I can think of, I love that your station is called the procrastination station, right? Nation? Sorry,
Hmm.
nation. I love that. And how did you come about that?
Oh well, I'm a master procrastinator. I spent a long time doing just that. Avoiding just basically avoiding everything. So, and it's something that everybody goes through,
Absolutely.
and it just encompasses so much like resilience. It
Yeah.
just encompasses all aspects of our life, and that's how I got how I got to Procrastination Station and Procrastinator's Pit Stop, where we're talking today.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And you yourself are a procrastination coach, am I right?
I sure am, and it's interesting because sometimes people come to me and they ask me, how can I procrastinate better?
Yeah, and what would your answer be to that? That's such an interesting question.
Oh, I think that's a topic for a whole other show on its own. But in a nutshell, there is also a way that procrastination can work for you,
Mm,
if you know how to use it, and you don't. It takes a lot of self regulation, a lot of self control. But again, we'll have to go into that on another show, because it's just a huge topic in and of itself. I just
yeah.
thought it was funny that somebody would immediately jump to that and say, okay, I want to procrastinate better.
Yeah, that's hilarious, but so true. I'm really curious to know more about that. Yeah, wonderful.
We'll definitely put it on the docket for one of our next shows. And just before we wrap up here, how can our listeners connect with you? Share your preferred channels and handles. How can
Yeah,
we reach you?
so I have a kind of a new Instagram. So it's called coach.me.life. And I just created a company, which is called coachmelife.com. So you can email me, Mridula at coachmelife.com too. And I would love to hear back from anybody and have a discussion.
Sounds great. And to all our listeners too, just be sure to check out the comments. We'll have that information listed down there as well for easy access. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Mridula. Your insights and experiences are truly inspiring.
Oh,
To our listeners, thank you for tuning in to Procrastinator's Pit Stop, and stay tuned for more inspiring stories and practical advice to help you conquer procrastination and boost your productivity. Until next time, keep pushing forward and stay motivated.